Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa. I'm Rochelle Ferguson-Biahi with the top stories on the continent. Rwandan prosecutors charged the wife of an opposition activist with conspiring to topple President Paul Kagame and forming an armed group. Benin officially requests that thrones, statues and jewels looted by France in 1892 be returned to their rightful home in the West African nation. But the response from France is no. We explore why. And in Ivory Coast, thousands of tons of cocoa still haven't been purchased. It's all due to falling global prices, which mean buyers will face huge losses if they honour their contracts. But first, Rwandan prosecutors have charged the pregnant wife of an opposition activist with conspiring to unseat President Paul Kagame and seeking to form an illegal armed group. Violet Uhuru, a dual citizen of Rwanda and Britain, appeared in court in Kigali today. She and her husband, Fustan Rukundo, deny the charges, which they say are politically motivated. For more, Stephanie Aglietti is in Kigali.
It was the first appearance of Violet Amaoro since the police announced her arrest at the beginning of this month. She looked tired but fine. Amaoro is the wife of an opponent from RNC, an opposition group in exile, but for Kigali, it is a terrorist organization. Amaoro is accused alongside her cousin, a policeman in Kigali. She is suspected to have sent him WhatsApp messages asking him to reveal information about state security and asking him to go to Uganda to form an armed group to attack Rwanda. Today, her co-accused confessed the charges. Amaoro denied everything. Her lawyer said that she should be freed during the time of the investigation because she is 5 months pregnant.
France's foreign ministry has confirmed the kidnapping of a French national in Chad. According to a military source, the abduction happened south of the town of Abetche, that's close to the border with Sudan's Darfur region. No group has claimed responsibility for the kidnapping. The last such case in Chad dates back to 2009, when a Red Cross worker was abducted and released 3 months later. Next, we're first for a former French colony. Benin has officially requested that artefacts which were looted by France in 1892 be returned. A collection of thrones, statues and jewels are currently on display at Paris's Musée du Quai de Branly. The quest has fallen on deaf ears, and despite a letter from Benin's president, France has officially denied the request. Nicolas Germain and Emmanuel Soji report.
In the Quai Branly Museum in Paris, you can find many artifacts from Benin, royal statues, doors, thrones. President Patrice Talon asked for them back. But French Foreign Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault has refused in the letter seen by France 24. Paris signed a convention against looting artifacts in 1997, but it cannot be used retroactively. The objects from Benin have been in France for more than a century, he said. This Thursday, several NGOs wrote a letter to President François Hollande to protest.
The foreign minister said no, so we now turn to President Hollande so he can say yes. We are supported by lawmakers from France and Benin, from local kings in Benin, by NGOs, and France cannot claim to be a country defending human rights if it defends looting.
In the streets of Cotonou, everyone wants the return of the statues and thrones.
It's true, France kept them for a long time, but France must listen to Benin's demand. They belong here.
They must give back our heritage. It doesn't belong to France.
The objects must return home so that our grandchildren know what the kings used to own.
We can make copies of the objects, give them to France, and we keep the originals.
It was the first time a former French colony had asked for the return of artifacts taken by Paris several decades ago.
Over the last 2 months, Madagascar has been hit by power cuts on a daily basis. Dirama, the national supplier, is unable to provide electricity consistently. The company is currently in the process of restructuring and looking for a new director. Our correspondent sent us this report.
After weeks of putting up with daily power cuts, angry residents have taken to the streets. Spontaneous protests have erupted across the capital. People want their electricity back.
The electricity's cut off from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. and every time we try to complain, the authorities make us stop and they intimidate us.
Small businesses are the hardest hit by the power cuts.
All this is rotten, but the problem is that our bosses could lose money, so we're still selling some of the products that have gone off.
Dirama, the national electricity supplier, operates mainly diesel-fired power plants, a system that's costly and obsolete. It sells the kilowatt-hour at a loss to its consumers, due in part to poorly negotiated contracts with major oil suppliers, but also because of rampant embezzlement, according to several reports.
We were able to complete these investigations in 2016, and they concerned corruption, favoritism in awarding contracts, and contracts with fictitious services.
A government plan to transition to other energy sources and overhaul Dirama is underway, financed by the World Bank.
Power outages are a sign of deficiency, but I don't want to waste time on just dealing with the power cuts. We need to focus on the solution as well. We are working on putting 5 hydraulic dams in place and getting solar power set up in various regions, all that while dealing with power cuts.
After decades of inactivity, Dirama hopes its new energy policy will be the jumpstart needed to achieve financial balance in 3 years.
And finally, Ivory Coast is the world's leading producer of cocoa, but the industry is in crisis. Thousands of tonnes are stacked up at ports and villages across the country without any buyers in sight. Well, it's all because of the falling global price. The local price has stayed the same, meaning that buyers face massive losses if they honour their contracts.
Cocoa know-how is passed down from generation to generation. Here, everyone's a cocoa farmer. It's the treasure of the country and the main source of income for farmers and their families. But this year, farmers are having a hard time selling it.
The lack of interested buyers is our main difficulty. Sometimes they offer us ridiculous prices, 800 francs or 500 francs, and we sieve our cocoa. Farmers are forced to sell because they have no other way of sending their children to school. It's tough.
For these farmers, the crisis began more than 3 months ago. On the world market, the price of cocoa has been plummeting. It fell by a quarter in just a few weeks. Today, it's not much more than the farm gate price, the price set by the state for the Ivorian farmers. Buyers facing massive losses have backed out of their contracts, leaving thousands of tonnes of unwanted cocoa. Trucks laden with beans surround the port in Abidjan. People are starting to lose their patience.
Everyone is refusing to take the cocoa and no one is telling us anything. We've been parked here for nearly 2 weeks. But if this carries on, the cocoa will take a hit and it will become mouldy, so we're very worried. We want to know when they will unload us, because there are trucks that have been parked up here for nearly 2 months.
The Cocoa Coffee Council, the government body in charge of cocoa, promises things will be back to normal by the end of the month, but it hasn't explained how. Cocoa accounts for half of the country's export earnings and 2/3 of its exports. There are worries about how this will damage the economy. Meanwhile, farmers fear for their future. Without any money, they can't feed their families or prepare for the next cocoa season.
Your Eye on Africa team is back at 9:45 p.m. Paris time tomorrow. Do stay tuned. Up next, more international headlines.